On the day I died, my sister's wedding went ahead as planned. She wore a wedding dress and married my boyfriend. My mom made several phone calls that went unanswered, angrily cursing me for being ungrateful. My younger brother messaged me, accusing me of being petty, for remembering an incident from 2 years ago. My usually reticent father coldly said, "Tell her if she doesn't come home today, we'll pretend we never had a daughter do it." They didn't really want me to come home. They just didn't want my sister's wedding to be less than perfect without my blessing. But I was already dead. From a very young age, I knew I was not well liked in this family. When my mom returned from a business trip with 2 new toys and gave them to Justin and Jessica, I reminded her politely that she hadn't given me one. She frowned impatiently, saying it was expensive, and she didn't have enough money on her for me, that I was only 5 years old. But I already had a vague sense of other people's emotions, especially when it came to my own mother. At my sister's wedding, my mom and a few relatives finished their pleasantries, and then went to a corner to repeatedly call my phone. No one answered. By the third cult getting disconnected, my mom looked incredulous, saying, "Jasmine, I'm your mother." Justin came over, patting her back reassuringly. "Mom, don't be angry. It's not worth it for Jasmine. You don't know she is just like that." My mom's frustration and grievance finally found an outlet with her most beloved son. "Of all 3 of you children, I've invested the most effort in Jasmine. When she was born, the doctor said, she stole nutrients from your brother to survive." These words I had heard her repeat countless times throughout my life. In the end, it often resulted in me being punished and locked in my room, watching them go out as a family of 4. "Mom, please don't be angry. Rest assured, even if I have to be tied up, I will make sure she is here." Justin comforted my mom and then sent me many messages. "Jasmine, you better show up within an hour. Why are you so selfish? You know Mom has a heart condition, yet you still upset her. If a man is worth your grudge until today, then doesn't your sister also deserve your blessings?" After sending this message, his fingers paused on the keyboard. A few seconds later, he put away his phone and turned to help greet guests. Even he didn't believe it. Jessica was his dear sister, and she was a good daughter to my parents. How could she be MY's sister? As I floated upstairs, I saw Jessica sitting in the dressing room. The makeup artist was touching up her slightly smeared eye makeup. She held onto her father's hand, tears glistening in her eyes. "Dad, can you believe Jasmine still hasn't come?" she asked softly. "She's my little sister, and I really hope to have her blessing on this important day." My usually stern and cold father patted her shoulder, gently comforting her. "Don't worry. I asked Justin to contact her. I won't let you have any regrets." He found Justin in the hallway, and with a stern expression said, "You tell Jasmine if she doesn't come today, we'll pretend we never had a daughter." Dad, she's not responding to my messages. She even ignored Mom's calls. Justin gritted his teeth. I knew it. Someone like her, heartless from the start. She gave us false hope in the beginning, just to ruin my sister's special day. Today was Jessica's special day. She was going to marry Steven, her boyfriend of 2 years. 2 years ago, when I brought Steven home, Jessica fell in love with him at first sight. I remember her eyes lighting up when she first saw Steven, and that night, she made up an excuse to go for a walk with me. Buying me a bubble tea. She linked arms with me. "Jasmine, I really like guys like Steven. You're so talented. You can definitely find someone better. Why not just give Steven to me?" I refused. Yet shortly after returning to school, Steven broke up with me when I pressed for reasons. He seemed annoyed and pushed my hand away. As I sat on the ground, the palm of my hand scraped from the rough floor. He looked at me with disgust. "You still want to lie to me? Even your family couldn't bear it," and told me everything. One morning, when my mom suddenly asked me to go buy vegetables with her, my brother Justin told Steven some truths about me. My bad character, stealing money from home, bullying classmates, and even having an abortion in college. At the end, Justin sighed. Jasmine is my sister and I want to support her. But I can't watch you walk into a fire. As my scraped palm continued to hurt, I sat on the ground looking up at Steven. As he recounted the things he had learned, after his last word fell, I suddenly smiled. He frowned, asking, "Are you going to defend yourself?" I shook my head, smiling. They are right, I never had deep feelings for Steven. And my family exaggerated how bad I was. My dearest family. When I was alive no one cared. After death no one even knew. As I spoke, Steven arrived dressed in a suit with styled hair. He looked even more handsome. He kissed Jessica's cheek, softly asking, "Jasmine still hasn't arrived. Let's forget about her. Such people will only tarnish our wedding." Jessica then lovingly hugged him, looking genuinely concerned. Just like 3 years ago, when I was recognized as an outstanding graduate, the school hoped my parents would attend and say a few words on stage. For photo ops I carefully worded my request, called home and made the request to my mother. She agreed. But on the morning of the graduation day, she called to say they couldn't make it. Jasmine was sick, and they couldn't leave her alone. In a video call, Jessica apologized with a somewhat pale face. "I'm sorry, Jasmine. I'm feeling a little unwell. You've always been independent, and if our parents don't go, you can handle it." "Jasmine, congratulations on your graduation. How could I be happy on my graduation day? I apologized to my teachers, the school and the staff in the activities department." Passing by a camera I overheard complaints about having to rearrange everything. Because of me, what trash. Despite being the outstanding graduate took. At the end of the ceremony, I saw Jessica's social media post. It was just a minor cold, but her parents took great care of her. One of the small joys of life. A photo of the 3 of them in Jessica's bedroom, claiming they hadn't even gone to the hospital. Such a serious illness. The banquet hall played a melodious piano piece. Jessica, in a long fishtail wedding dress, carried a large bouquet of white roses toward Steven. After the speeches from Dad and Mom, it was Justin's turn. Standing on stage, he jokingly fist bumped Steven. "This is my one and only sister, the treasure of the family. If you dare to treat her badly, no one in the family will spare you." Steven gazed at Jessica's face, deeply affectionate. "I could never do that." Applause erupted as warmth filled the venue. My soul stood on a bouquet at the side of the stage, watching everything numbly. I thought I would feel heartbroken, but perhaps I had already experienced all the pain of this life. Before death I just watched everything cynically, feeling hollow inside, like a gust of wind passing through. At a certain table voices murmured, "Hey, I remember they had 3 children. Why did Justin say he had only one sister? It's probably their second daughter, Jasmine. What use is good studying when character matters most?" Thanks to my parents' influence, I had a reputation among other relatives as well. In fact, I had one aunt who was kind to me. Once took during a family visit. She gifted me a plush dolphin toy. Justin, accustomed to getting his way, wanted to play with it when I refused. He took scissors and destroyed the dolphin. Unknowingly, the aunt saw the mess. To protect her beloved son's reputation, my mom told the aunt Jasmine didn't like that toy, and insisted on cutting it up herself, saying she didn't want to see it. After that incident, my aunt's demeanor changed, and she even skipped giving me a red envelope. During family visits, my mom probably felt guilty, and was a little kind to me for a while. But that soon dissipated. In our family, my parents' favoritism has a clear division of labor. When Jessica was born, my dad's business took off. He believed it was Jessica bringing good luck, so he doted on her the most. And my mom, she adored Justin the most, because he was the son she had been hoping for, after having 3 daughters. As for me, born chubby and healthy, my twin brother didn't even make it past 24 hours. They all thought I was not auspicious. When I was little I couldn't understand why. Whatever Justin and Jessica wanted to eat, it would be on the dining table the next day, even though I was allergic to seafood. On my birthday, just because Jessica mentioned she wanted to eat crab, my dad booked a place at a seafood restaurant. When I was 12, There was an earthquake in the neighboring county. The whole family was taking a nap at home at the time. My parents didn't hesitate. One person carried Justin. One person carried Jessica. I stumbled downstairs, tears streaming down my face, watching the ceiling shake, crying out loud. But no one came to save me. But that's how it was when I was 12, when the driver grabbed my throat and dragged me to the deserted woods at the foot of the mountain in the afternoon. After the wedding was successfully concluded, my dad immediately turned serious, asking my mom to continue calling me with teary eyes. Jessica, with a few shimmering teardrops at the corner of her eyes, held my dad's hand and spoke gently. Let it go, Dad. Jasmine is still a child, maybe throwing a child's temper. After all, I am her sister. I should not dwell on these things with her. Sure enough, there was a hint of heartache in my dad's eyes. Justin said resentfully, Sis, you just think too highly of her. You treat her like a sister. Has she ever treated you like a sister? Jessica bit her lip, looking like she was about to cry. I stood beside them watching her, feeling a sense of irony. Jessica's favoritism by the family was already so obvious that it couldn't be more apparent. Yet she still felt it wasn't a knot. I knew it was because she resented me. Actually, in the beginning, although my mom didn't like me, she didn't treat me so badly. On my birthday, she would still bring Becca cake to celebrate with me. Just as I was about to make a wish, while blowing out the candles, Jessica suddenly burst into tears. Wiping away her tears, she forced a smile. It's nothing, I just suddenly remembered that today was supposed to be the birthday celebration for two people DLT. That sentence made my mom's expression change. I clasped my hands together, about to make a wish. She abruptly snatched the candle away. All you know is how to eat. Jasmine, do you know that your brother died because of you? Do you have no heart? I was frightened, staring blankly at her. My mom became even angrier, and she threw the cake into the trash can. After she went into the bedroom, I looked at Jessica with tears in my eyes. When there was no one else around, she finally revealed her true emotions to me. 10-year-old Jessica, still wearing a gentle smile on her face, spoke words as sharp as poison daggers. Jasmine, why were you born? She brushed her warm fingertips across my face, then suddenly twisted it hard. Originally, my mom and dad only loved me, but now that you've taken a share of their love away, you should have died with your brother. I never understood why she hated me so much. But strangely, after Justin was born, she treated him well. The year I took the college entrance exam, Justin was about to start 9th grade. It was a critical year for him, but my dad's business was too busy to attend to, and my mom was also at a crucial stage in her promotion. But my mom asked me to enroll in the local university for the convenience of taking care of Justin. I didn't agree. She looked at me with cold eyes. Jasmine, don't you understand the situation at home? Why are you acting so irresponsibly? After I left for school, a 22-year-old Jessica suddenly wanted to learn the piano. My mom had someone throw away my bed and wardrobe, packed my clothes, and threw them into the miscellaneous room. My bedroom became Jessica's piano room. She posted a video on her social media, sitting in front of the expensive piano she just bought. The sunlight was streaming in, and she had a serene smile on her face. When I called back, my mom was still angry that I didn't listen to her. Her voice cold and indifferent. Since you've grown wings and don't listen to anything I say, why do you keep a room in this house if you don't plan to come back? Jessica took the phone. Jasmine, please don't anger Mom, okay? When you come back, you can sleep in the same room as me. You won't be left without a place to stay at home. Even though she tried her best to hide it, there was still a hint of amusement in her voice. Just a month after I left, she couldn't wait to kick me out of this house, and my mom chose to acquiesce and enable it. In the afternoon, Jessica went back to their new home with Steven, and I followed behind my parents and Justin. Justin drove. My parents sat in the back seat. The empty passenger seat was always reserved for Jessica. I sat in it listening to them discussing my faults. She hated me so much, hated this family, that she didn't even want to come back. For her sister's wedding. My mom leaned tiredly on my dad's shoulder, and I felt that my education had truly failed. My dad patted her with pity. She's an ungrateful white-eyed wolf. Not worth your trouble. I turned my head carefully observing their expressions, trying to find a hint of care from them. But there was none. My sudden disappearance only made them feel annoyance and resentment. Not one of them, for a second, doubted whether I was in trouble. Although I was just a soul, I still shed tears. As I cried, I asked with a smile, "Mom, did you really ever love me? Why do you hate me so much? Why did you give birth to me?" I had asked the same question long ago. It was when I was in 9th grade, a year of intense study. My dad was away on a business trip. Justin was still young and Jessica had just entered her freshman year of college. My mom had kidney stones and I cared for her every day, shuttling between school and the hospital, making me lose weight from exhaustion. My mom seemed to soften a bit, giving me more pocket money that month than Justin. When we met our neighbors, she praised me several times, saying I was sensible and filial. When I was bullied at school, she even went to the school to stand up for me. Everything seemed to be going well, until one afternoon, when we were crossing the street together, she somehow held my hand. This mother-daughter intimacy was so unfamiliar to me. Almost instinctively, I pushed her hand away, causing her to stagger back a few steps. To this dusk fell the green light turned red. A small car whizzed past us. My mom's eyes on me slowly changed, showing a coldness that was all too familiar. She kept a straight face and said, "Indeed an ungrateful white-eyed wolf." That night I was nearly engulfed by regret, confusion and helplessness. I used a compass to poke several holes in my arm. Even the pain couldn't ease the despair and restlessness raging inside me. Eventually I walked into my mom's room and asked her, "Mom, since you don't love me, why did you give birth to me?" My mom closed her eyes, saying nothing, but I knew she was not asleep. She had never deigned to answer me when I was alive. Now that I was dead, she couldn't hear nor would she respond. After dinner, Justin called my phone again. This time it was answered to. He was filled with anger, and finally had an outlet to vent. "Jasmine, are you an animal? You didn't come home for your sister's wedding, causing Dad and Mom to be sad. Do you think you're great playing us like this?" A moment of silence. A hoarse male voice came from the other end of the line. "I'm her boyfriend. She said that your whole family is disgusting, and she won't come back to see you. Stop calling." The call ended. Justin stared in disbelief, then suddenly kicked over a chair, swearing. But I was stiff all over, losing all my strength. At the sound of that voice, I was forcibly dragged into that memory. Before my death, I missed the last train because of overtime work. I could only take a taxi to the bus station. The driver was a pale-faced young man, with a somewhat gloomy look in his eyes. He looked somewhat familiar, but my brain was so tired to the point of exhaustion, holding on to things, leaning against the car window to rest out. First everything seemed normal. He chatted with me like all drivers do. It was then that Jessica called as a bride-to-be. Even on the eve of her wedding, she didn't forget to tease me a little. "Jasmine, I'm about to marry Steven tomorrow and I'm so excited. I can't sleep," she said softly and sweetly. "Thank you for bringing him home." I bit my lip, my voice filled with anger. "Jessica, this disgusting talk. These dirty tricks. How many times do you want to play this game?" She seemed completely oblivious. Her tone even more light-hearted and sweet. "So it's settled, you have to come to the wedding tomorrow." Hang up the phone, unable to hold back my panting breath, my chest heaving violently. The driver suddenly spoke. "Are you having a fight with your family?" Frowning, I looked up, only to realize that the car was in a desolate wilderness. At some point, my heart raced rapidly. I forced myself to stay calm and asked, "How much do you want?" But what he wanted wasn't money. The continuous overtime had made me extremely tired. My limbs were weak and I couldn't escape the grip of a young man's strength. He covered my mouth and dragged me into a small grove. The night wind was quiet, and the moonlight gently spilled as he tightly pinched my neck and slapped my face hard. He said, "You slut. Do you regret leaving me? Why does the rich man you're with look down on me? Beg for mercy, bark like a dog, and I'll let you go." But I didn't even recognize him. "Who are you?" "Who Ryu." Suddenly the hand around my neck loosened. It turned into a gentle caress on my face. He said, "I am your man." I had a vague feeling that he wasn't entirely a stranger, but I just couldn't remember where I had seen him before. I struggled with all my might, and somehow managed to touch my phone. The speed dial would call back. The most recent phone call. After 2 rings, Jessica decisively chose to hang up. The man realized the clue and cruelly laughed, putting the phone in his pocket. He then broke every finger on my right hand. In his pocket was also a spring knife. While I still had consciousness and awareness, I felt the blade cut into my left wrist. Pulling away slowly, the knife tip grazed my cheek, pulling off a patch of uneven facial skin that he said, "You slut. See how you try to seduce others with this face." Now I don't remember if I died in pain or from too much blood loss. All I recall is the wind that night, whistling past my exposed flesh and blood-stained cheeks top. Perhaps people think of some pleasant things before they die. In it days I thought back to before I turned 5. My mom sent me to the countryside to give birth to Justinda. There only my elderly grandma lived alone. She was the kindest person in the world to me, giving me all the warmth in my life. She picked the tenderest sprouts of Chinese tune from the tree, blanched them, fried eggs, and fed me when my mom called and said Jessica wanted Chinese tune, but couldn't find any in the market. My grandma said, "Oh, the rain was too little this year, and the Chinese tune hasn't grown yet." After hanging up, the mischievous old lady winked at me and smiled. I will always remember the taste lingering on my tongue. That night. But in the year I turned 5, my grandma passed away. Justin was only a year and a half, and my mom had to bring me back home. She found me quite displeasing. As a result, she whispered to my dad, "Is there something wrong with this child? How could she even harm her grandma?" I looked at her blankly. A 5-year-old child didn't really grasp life and death. I just knew that there was no longer someone in the world who would unwaveringly choose me among a few people. From then on, I was the child never favored. Duty. In the next few days I stayed in this house, coldly observing their normal lives. I watched my mom call Jessica, asking what she wanted to eat when she returned home. Jessica coyly said she wanted seafood. When my mom went to the morning market, she happened to meet our former neighbor and her daughter Coco, out shopping for groceries. Coco and I were childhood classmates, and later joined the same company. We weren't very close friends, but at least we were quite familiar. My mom envied it and said, "Having a daughter like Coco is so considerate, helping you buy groceries the moment she comes back. Unlike our Jasmine, who doesn't understand anything. She doesn't even come home when her sister gets married and brings a boyfriend along to scold us." Coco was surprised and said, "Auntie Jasmine doesn't have a boyfriend." My mom was stunned looking at her. "She's in the marketing department next door, and always busy. So how could she have time to find a boyfriend?" Coco continued, "Jasmine cares about you a lot. Last month we got a bonus. Went shopping and she bought a gold bracelet. She said she would give it to you when her sister gets married." A bewildered expression only flickered across my mom's face for a moment, swiftly fading into the familiar icy sarcasm. She said, "Jasmine just puts on a good front in front of outsiders. You don't know what her attitude is at home." Seeing this, Coco and her mom couldn't say anything else and bid a polite farewell. My mom bought a lot of seafood Jessica loved and carried 2 big bags full of them home. Standing at the door, she took out her keys to open the door. My phone rang. It was my number. "Are you Mary? We caught the prime suspect in a series of brutal murders. Found this phone on him and inferred you were the owner's mother. The suspect has confessed and disclosed the burial site. Can you and your family come over here?" During my most rebellious and extreme youth, many times I painfully thought, what if I died? Would they regret it? Would my mother shed a tear for me? Now I finally know. After the police said those words, she just responded lightly and hung up. As if nothing had happened, she opened the door, poured up the seafood, and began to process the shrimps in crab stop. Perhaps accidentally a shrimp prong pierced her finger. She held her injured finger and went to the living room to get the first aid kit. Justin pushed the door open. This moment, panicked and helpless, he looked at her, his lips trembling. Mom, Jasmine. He received a scam call just now saying Jasmine died. My mom, finding a band-aid, said, "What a joke. Jasmine is living more freely than anyone. Do these scammers not check before calling M? Mom, it's not a scam. Call Jasmine, she's really dead," Justin said in pain. The police had already called both me and Dad was rushing home in the car. Her actions froze as she raised her head, looking at Justin. The sunlight outside shone in, climbing over the fine lines at the corner of her eyes, and falling into her usually aloof eyes. The emotionless expression lingered until they got in the car and headed to the police station, hundreds of miles away. Doubt. My mom isn't one to be quiet, but surprisingly she was silent on the way. Jessica held her hand, trying to comfort her softly. "Mom, the dead can't come back to life. Jasmine wouldn't want to see you like this." For the first time, my mom ignored her beloved elder daughter's words. She pulled out her hand coolly. Jessica stiffened her eyes, showing a mix of sadness and indignation. In the police station, 2 officers received them. The slightly older officer first comforted my mom, then told her they found my body. "We have tried to stitch everything as much as possible, but some scattered body parts were taken by the suspect, according to his confession. Possibly." His words suddenly halted, a hint of reluctance crossing his eyes. My mom looked at him and uttered her first words since leaving home. "Possibly what?" "Possibly used for cooking," he said, causing my mom to nod. Maybe. Her calm expression was too much for the police's expectations. As the young officer looked back a couple of times during the journey back, I remembered why his face seemed familiar to me. About a month ago I had seen him near the company. It was a drizzly afternoon. I left the office building, and my mom called, saying Jessica planned to have a wedding in a month. She ordered me to come back home. I couldn't help but laugh. "After being away for half a year, no one from your family contacted me, and now you want me to return." My mom was furious. "Jasmine, you are so ungrateful. Is this also your home? Is this also my home every time I come back? I can only sleep on a small bed next to Jessica's piano. If I deliberately took the last chicken wing from the plate, my dad would scold me for being disrespectful. If I stained the sofa cover during my period, my mom would give me a disgusted look and ask me to wash it myself. Is this the kind of home it is, Mom? I have no home," I said with a smile, and hung up the phone in the rain. Just a few steps away, a man in a black coat stood there, his face a bit blurry. In that moment when our eyes met, he awkwardly turned his head away. But at that moment, my chest was filled with a sour emotion, too preoccupied to care about the passerby's abnormality. So he had been eyeing me all along. And after hearing the argument between my mom and me, he saw me as an easy target. Took the pain from that night. Seemed to come back with a vengeance. This time it descended upon my ethereal soul. I curled up in the air, feeling like I had 1,000 wounds leaking air. It hurt more than that night, but I couldn't help but lift my head, staring straight at my mom's expression. At this point I was still searching. Would she regret it? Would she be sad? Would she feel even a fraction of my pain? My mom went to see the killer under police escort. It was said that his motive was simple and straightforward. His ex-girlfriend had left him for a wealthy man, and even tricked him into giving away all his assets. Since then he had spiraled into extreme madness. The victims he targeted bore some resemblance to his former girlfriend Dod. Behind the glass, the interrogation room was cold and severe. He raised his head, looked at my mom, and suddenly grinned. It seemed like he knew he had no way out. He wanted to make others suffer, as he did in front of my mom. He began to describe the details of my death. Accidentally. She got hold of a phone and even made a call. Fortunately, it was soon hung up. Was it you who called? Your daughter crying is quite a sight. Looks even more like that despicable woman. So I peeled off her face that she was in so much pain that she couldn't even shed tears. Still calling for her mom. The police shouted sternly enough. Do not provoke the victim's family. My mom stood in front of the GL. Her back still stiff and stared straight at the killer. She didn't speak. Nor did she shed a tear. I floated in front of her. Face to face with her. Though she couldn't see or hear me. I said, Mom, I hate you. That night. The night when I was violated. And then dismembered alive. I experienced the most excruciating agony that a human can endure. Blood gushed, coloring my vision completely red. Desperate cries of despair, like a wild beast, emanated from my throat. To the sound of wind, the chirping of insects, the rustle of falling dry leaves, fungi growing on damp wood. Countless noises harmonized into a cacophony, ringing in my ears. Deafening, I kept screaming, Mom. It hurts. Save me, Mom. Save me. In the most desperate and helpless moments, humans unconsciously call out for this title, hoping for a miracle. But there was none. You were in your warm bed at home, having a pleasant dream, that you dreamt of your beloved eldest daughter, Jessica, getting married and living a happy life. Justin, pursuing a stable relationship with the girl he liked, studying at a great university, majoring in a sought-after field, securing a good job after graduation. In your dream, there was never me. After coming out of the police station, they went to my rented apartment to pack up my belongings. I had stayed here for 2 years after graduation, working and living. They had never visited. Sitting in the car, my mom suddenly called out, Jasmine. Jessica looked uneasy, her eyes revealing unhidden guilt. Was that call before your death made to you? Jessica opened her mouth, unable to speak for a moment. Usually eloquent, she couldn't come up with a suitable reason. Finally she said, I had to wake up early at 4 to do my makeup, so I went to bed early. Probably accidentally turned it off. In my dream, she shed a few tears, making her heartache look genuine. My mom nodded, not saying a word, as if it was just a casual question. I sat in the car for a long time, slowly recovering from the near-death pain from earlier. The corners of Jessica's eyes glisten with tears. I aimlessly recalled, remembering the names of the 3 of us. Jessica was their pampered first child. Justin was the heaven-sent blessing. And my name. Less than 24 hours after my twin brother stopped breathing, the doctor said, fetal development issues in the mother's womb, led to organ failure. Beside the hospital bed, an old lady shared an experience. The situation was definitely caused by another child, taking away this one's nutrition. I've seen it in the countryside during my years as a midwife. Look at your daughter, isn't she doing well? My mom leaned against the bedside, looking at me with a mix of resentment and confusion. Even after I turned a month old, she still hadn't given me a name. It was only when my grandma called. The jasmine flowers in front of the old house were blooming beautifully. This year let her be named Jasmine. Silence filled the car. Justin broke the silence. He was somewhat uncomfortable, as he said, I didn't expect Jasmine to have such bad luck. My mom suddenly turned to him. What do you call her? Justin was taken aback. He always called Jessica sister, or used both her first and last names when referring to me. It was an unspoken rule agreed upon in our family. Jasmine is your sister. Your dad and I can call her that. You shouldn't address her so informally. It's rude. Justin, who had been spoiled since childhood, was suddenly at a loss when my mom challenged him. In the end, he awkwardly touched his nose. Mom, are we going to bring back the ashes of our sister? After cremation, my mom coldly glanced at him, not saying a word. My rented apartment wasn't very tidy. A 1-bedroom of 30 square meters, with a sofa and coffee table next to the bed. On the coffee table, there was half of a leftover dried pomelo. The sofa had a blanket draped over it, and the floor was littered with many books. Justin was slightly OCD. It was clear he wanted to say something, But after glancing at my mom, he remained silent. My mom picked up a book about psychology. She paused, turned a few pages, and her fingers suddenly tightened. The 2 chapters about self-destructive tendencies and the original family were marked with numerous lines. By me, those pages were loose, easily flipping to them, indicating they had been repeatedly read many times. She opened the drawer next to her. Hospital medical records and transcripts of therapy sessions. Several empty medicine bottles. Inside there was a small stack of airplane tickets and high-speed rail tickets. Most were for popular coastal tourist cities. In the not-so-spacious room 4, people were crammed inside, and all could sense it. A certain heavy and viscous atmosphere was gradually pressing down, silently enveloping them. Unable to take it any longer, Jessica pointed at the topmost ticket to Sonia and pretended to speak lightly. "It's all right, Jasmine had a good time. Before she left, she had been to more places than us. This was one of her many strategies she used on me. In front of family, she would casually mention how I always seemed to have a happier time. Without them around, I always treated others very well. Unlike how hysterical and tense I appeared in front of them. This was to justify my coldness and heartlessness. But today this tactic suddenly didn't work." My mom sharply turned her head, staring at her with an icy gaze. "Mom." Jessica had just uttered 2 words when a heavy slap landed on her face. She was stunned at my dad had always doubted on Jessica, quickly coming over to shield her frowning. "Talk properly, what's the need to hit a child?" My mom was holding the therapy transcripts I had with the psychologist. "When did you start engaging in self-harming behaviors?" "After starting middle school." "Do you feel a lack of belonging in the family? Why do you think you are superfluous?" Her lips trembled, slowly enveloped by a delayed anguish. "You always act so well behaved in front of us." Her voice was filled with confusion. "Behind our backs, what have you said to Jasmine?" My dad disapproved slightly, saying Jasmine was never an auspicious name. "Jessica didn't say anything wrong." "Shut up." My mom shouted sharply, her face flushed abnormally. Concerned about her health, Justin quickly walked over to support her dad. "You know Mom has a weak heart. Jasmine is already gone. You can't hit Jessica no matter what." My dad's eyes narrowed. Jessica seemed stunned by the slap. She looked at my mom for a moment, and suddenly broke into a sweet smile, tinged with malice, like a flower dripping venom from every petal. "Mom, have you forgotten when I was so young? I knew nothing. You were the one who told me that Jasmine had killed our brother." Just interrupted in anger Jessica. "How dare you speak to Mom like that?" The 2 of them stood face to face, clear signs of the distinct 2 factions. In my tiny room, they argued and blamed each other for my death. I was just drifting on the sofa, coldly watching all of this until the doorbell rang. It was the landlady. She lived upstairs, and when she opened the door, her eyes widened. "Who are you? Where's Jasmine?" The soundproofing of this house was not that great. You can't contain the emotional disputes of 4 people. She liked peace and quiet. And when I lived here, there was never much noise. After the sentence was asked, I watched as the 4 of them, as if choked by the neck, suddenly fell silent. After a while my mom spoke. "We are Jasmine's family. She has passed away and we are here to pack up her things." The landlady was shocked and couldn't believe it. And in the end tears started falling from her eyes. As she went upstairs, she kept crying and saying, "Such a good girl. Why is she so unlucky?" "I am not that lucky either. From birth to now it has always been like this." Interrupted, they couldn't argue anymore, and started packing my things, absent-mindedly. Actually, there was nothing to pack. I came and went barefoot. Only one thing lingered in my mind, but she was not willing to think about me. Finally my mom sat on the edge of the sofa, flipping through medical records by herself. It was dusk again. The blood-red twilight light poured into the room. Through the glass, the honking of cars could be heard. From outside the window, she paused, her expression gradually becoming dazed. Was she remembering something like that evening on the street? She held on to me, and when I pushed her away, a little eager to retrieve her love, She quickly withdrew her affection towards me. She was always so stingy, can you blame me? My mom closed the medical records. Her voice hoarse as she spoke. She has never been sensible since she was a child. Not close to me in a family with 3 children. I must naturally favor the one who is closer to me. Don't know. Mom, you're wrong. You've got the cause and effect wrong. Right after being brought back home, I instinctively censor indifference. So I kept testing you. When Jessica offered to help with the housework, you laughed and said, what can a child do? Go and take a rest. When I offered to help with the dishes, you eagerly agreed. But 'cause I broke a plate, you pointed at my forehead and called me clumsy. Mom. Once again in that hoarse voice, I said words they couldn't hear. The broken and fragmented sob in my voice could no longer be hidden. Mom, you brought me into this world, and I understood nothing but how you loved me. I loved you back. My love is a mirror that reflects your love. All the things, the sarcastic remarks and hysterical, emotional outbursts that I vaguely learned, you taught me all of them. I in this house. Your significance to me is different from everyone else. I spent a whole 10 months in your womb, connected by blood. This connection persisted even after I was born, pulling me subtly, even when I was 1,000 miles away. So that when I died, I was still being led by this invisible force, and my soul returned to her side. I tried to persuade myself that the world is vast. Life is broad and there is no need to be trapped by the confines of the original family. I went to see mountains. I saw the sea. I put away sharp objects. I took my medication on time every day. But passing by a certain city at an amusement park, when I saw a little girl holding a red balloon, holding her mom's hand, I would still suddenly freeze in place watching her. Just like when I was in primary school, my deskmate proudly told me, with the unique smugness of a little girl, she messed up an exam and her mom scolded her. She deliberately ran out of the house. Her mom finally found her, hugged her crying, saying she was so afraid of losing her, and she wouldn't scold her again. I didn't know back then that only a love child can act this way. So when I was locked in the utility room, reflecting again, I suddenly pushed the door open and ran out. I ran away from home. I sat on the old swing in the neighborhood, looking at the sparse stars in the night sky, rehearsing in my heart repeatedly. What would I say if Mom came looking for me worriedly? After all, she's my mom. I can't make her too sad. Just tell her to be a little nicer to me in the future. But I waited until midnight. The dark clouds covered the moon. The sky started drizzling. The stars were gone. I returned home all wet. The whole house was silent. Everyone was already asleep. Who would come out looking for me the next morning? I left with my backpack and my mom sat at the dining table, eating breakfast calmly saying, still willing to come back. I thought you wanted to live outside forever, so we can have fewer mouths to feed. At home. Only a love child dares to act spoiled, to have the qualifications to throw tantrums. I never escaped the strange circle of childhood. After 5 years old, I was restlessly unruly in a world devoid of guidance. I asked my mom many times why. I was almost begging her to love me. Not to love me the most, just to love me a little. Just like how she loved Justin and Jessica. You are not incapable. Why doesn't it work with me? Why? No answer. Night fell. She turned another page before she could read it. The police station called again. Sorry, Miss Mary. We just arrested the culprit. These days it's been busy here at the station. Your daughter has some belongings left here. Can you come pick them up when you're free? My mom and Justin went out together. Outside the lights were on and the streets were busy. She walked with her head down for a while, then suddenly asked Justin, do you think Jasmine hates me? No way. Justin was visibly startled, and it took him a while to awkwardly say, Mom, you gave birth to her after all. Like the murderer said. She was calling out for you before she died. How could she blame you, Dad? As he said that, he fell silent. Justin was already 21, not a naive child. He had never really liked me all that much. Just not with the same malice as Jessica. Not as obvious and active. Most of the time he silently stood behind Jessica, being the supportive one. But a child's behavior is just mimicking the adults, who hold the power of life and death in the family. Without their parents' approval, Justin and Jessica would never dare target me like that. Following them, I visited the police station for the second time. The police handed my mom a bag of belongings. The things inside were simple: a set of keys, a pack of tissues, a phone screen shattered into a spider web, and a blood-stained, completely distorted golden bracelet. In it was a crumpled card. "Happy birthday, Mom. Moonlight weaves." My mom stared blankly at the golden bracelet and the blood-blurred writing on the card. For a long time. Finally, she gazed at me with eyes that had always been cold, or fiercely emotional, and there was a hint of mist filling her eyes. On the 7th day after my death, in my 25th year of life, my mom, for the first time in her life, shed a tear for me. The clock hands turned back a month. The day after that call, I went to the office, and a colleague in the next cubicle told me she was pregnant. Hoping it's a girl, she placed her hand on her still flat stomach, with a soft smile on her lips. "I prefer daughters. Ever since she got pregnant, she always liked eating oranges, so let's just call her Orange." She was the most fierce and fiery female powerhouse in the department, but when she mentioned her children, her expression was one of gentle tranquility that I had never seen before. Sensing me looking at her blankly, she turned her head to me. "Jasmine, what's wrong?" "Nothing." I shook my head. "That night I had a dream. I dreamed that before I was born, my mom discovered the pregnancy and gently rested her hand on her abdomen, just like the loving gesture I had imagined. I went to see a doctor again. He said, if you can't move forward, try going back and see. Some things can't be relieved by medication anymore. They've turned into heart demons that are trapping you." I went to buy that golden bracelet. It was only 2 months until my mom's birthday. The salesperson smiled and asked me, "Do you want to write a birthday card for your mom?" I agreed and then took the pen from her hand. I thought, let's try again. Just one more time. I'm not the child who understands nothing now, and she has aged and declined. Maybe we could talk to. I always had hope. I always hoped she could still love me, but now there was no chance anymore. That rainy day when I received that call, my fate had already been determined. A month before. My ashes and belongings were brought back home and laid to rest in a cemetery on the outskirts. My elder brother buried there too, in a very small urn. On the day of the burial, the sky was overcast, but not a single drop of rain fell. My mom stood in front of the tombstone all day. The early signs of her grief and remorse were starting to show. I thought I would find relief. I thought I would be at ease. But in reality, as I watched her pain, my heart was filled with endless indifference. The decades of pain and emotions, in the remaining years of my life, exploded in those few hours, exhausting me. At night, after my mom came back home, she sat quietly on the sofa. She had retired now. Justin went back to school. My dad was busy at the factory. Jessica went back to her little home with Steven. Everyone, after this brief incident, had returned to their lives. After a long while, my mom suddenly pulled her lips to a smile. "Jasmine, now it's just the two of us." Stopped here. The next day, my mom got up early and went to the market, because she often bought seafood. As soon as she went, the stall owners enthusiastically promoted, saying today's shrimp was large and fresh, assuring that your daughter would love them. My mom said blankly, "My daughter is allergic to seafood." The stall owner looked at her strangely, didn't say anything in the end, and went to attend to other customers. My mother carried a bamboo basket, walking back and forth, in front of several vegetable stalls. She picked up carrots, then put them down, picked up green peppers, then put them down. This behavior was really strange. The stall owner kindly reminded her, "If you know what dish you want to make, I can recommend something for you." Watching her standing there, struggling to remember, with a confused look in her eyes, I suddenly understood. She didn't know what I liked to eat. From childhood to adulthood, I never had the privilege of ordering dishes like Jessica, nor was I a picky eater like Justin. I never had any choice. She always made whatever she wanted. and I just ate it. In the end, the stall owner took out a small bamboo basket from below and pushed it in front of my mother. We got some fresh wild mushrooms today. Very fresh. Want to buy some to stir fry with meat at home? Wild mushrooms. The word seemed to be like a sharp knife, piercing through a nerve. My mother held a small handful of mushrooms, then suddenly bent over, tears dripping down one by one. Jasmine. The number of times she called me that in front of me could be counted on one hand. But now I'm already dead, how could I hear it? She didn't buy anything. Carrying the empty bamboo basket back home, after sitting still for a while, she got up and called Jessica. Her tone was cold. You haven't been practic. The piano for half a year. If you still want it, I'll have someone deliver it to your house. If not, I'll have the scrap collectors come and take it away. Jessica suddenly started crying. She sobbed and said, Mom, what are you doing just because I'm married? Am I no longer a daughter of this family? Not deserving of a room at home? Your bedroom is still there for you. My mother said expressionlessly. I need to clear out Jasmine's room. Jessica didn't say anything. One cannot predict the future. The phone call I made to her before my death, even though it couldn't make her feel responsible for my death, made her position in this family become delicate. My mother acted quickly. The next morning the music room was already emptied. She wandered around the furniture market, trying to find the exact same bed and wardrobe that were thrown away before. But in the end she couldn't find the exact same ones. She took up the slightly musty clothes from the storage room, laid them out one by one and hung them in the wardrobe. There weren't many clothes in total. Besides, they were all clothes I bought when I was in school. Even if I were alive I couldn't wear them anymore. But then, she went out and found a craftsman at a jewelry store to repair that bracelet as much as possible, and wore it on her wrist. My memorial photo was placed in the room, and the first thing she did every morning after waking up was to go in and wipe it cleaned. I didn't understand what she was trying to do, make amends or trying to make herself feel better. When I was alive I longed so desperately for her love. Even a little would have been enough. But I only received it after death. I floated around the room restlessly, wanting to sweep things off the bookshelf, wanting to rip off the new bed sheets and comforter she had gotten, just like the countless times before, yelling hurtful and self-destructive words at her dad. Don't pretend anymore, Mom. Creating a false image of loving me, just to alleviate your guilt. Do you even believe it yourself? But I couldn't say it. Even if I did say it she wouldn't hear it. It was the first time as a soul I realized how cruel it was to exist as a spirit. When would I be able to dissipate and move on to the afterlife? Or would I be forever trapped in this home that wasn't mine, watching their seemingly happy lives from a distance? Luckily the answer came soon. That afternoon, my mother received a call from Justin's school. They said Justin had been involved in a serious fight with a classmate, resulting in severe injuries for the other student. Justin was facing expulsion and possibly even legal consequences. They hoped a guardian could come to the school soon to complete the withdrawal procedures. My mother held the phone, stunned. Why? He only has half a year left until graduation. How could he get into a fight with a classmate? For no reason. The school's explanation was polite and subtle, mostly due to some emotional disputes. In reality, Justin had been pursuing a girl for a while, just one declaration of love away, when another boy intercepted her. He couldn't believe it and went to confront him. The boy, holding hands with the girl, smiled helplessly. Your own sister died so tragically, and you still have the heart to fall in love. Who would dare to be with you? Justin flew into a rage and confronted him. The two of them started fighting. In a fit of anger he picked up a glass and smashed it on the boy's forehead, the shards piercing his temple. As he was the one who struck first, and the other student was more seriously injured. Expulsion was inevitable. What's more, the boy's parents had already reported the incident. The once arrogant and unruly Justin. Upon seeing my mother, burst into tears. My mother remained relatively calm, sat down, and negotiated compensation with the boy's parents. Initially they were adamant About appealing. Even if Justin wouldn't spend much time in prison, they wanted to give him a criminal record. But my mother proposed a settlement of $1 million. Instead. Ultimately, Justin was expelled from school, but at least he escaped imprisonment. On the way home he looked completely dejected. Unable to hold back, he said, "Jasmine is already dead. What's wrong with me falling in love? Can't I live a normal life?" My mother abruptly turned to him. Her gaze, as if sizing up a stranger, sent a shiver down Justin's spine. "What's wrong, Mom?" My mother shook her head and said hoarsely, "Let's go home." With only a high school diploma, no reputable companies wanted to hire Justin. My mother had him accompany my dad to the family factory, preparing him to take over the business in the future. It was tough and Justin wasn't enthusiastic, but he knew there was no other choice. However, in the third month, after he started working at the factory, something happened. A worker's right hand got caught in a machine and was crushed. After being rushed to the hospital, with blood everywhere, they barely saved his life. But his wife had just given birth. Their child was young, and the family lost its breadwinner. Yep, my dad, cleverly using a loophole in the contract, not only did not compensate, but instead demanded compensation from the worker for improper operation leading to machine damage. His karma would have it. After the worker was discharged from the hospital, he barged into the factory with a knife, found my dad and forced him at knife point to put both his hands into the machine. Justin stood there stupidly watching. It was his own father, but he didn't dare to step forward and take the knife away. Only after the incident did he drive my dad to the hospital and then call my mother too. I followed her into the hospital, watching my mother walk up to Justin, and with a bewildered look, she slapped him. "That's your father. Couldn't you have stopped it and saved him?" Justin's eyes were red from crying and he stammered, "Mom, the man was carrying a knife. How ridiculous. He could get into a fight with a classmate for a girl, but couldn't stop his own father." My dad couldn't save his right hand. He only had 2 fingers left in his left hand, the naked palm looking ghastly and terrifying. He said it hurt. My mother stared at the bloodstains on the bandages and suddenly asked blankly, "Do you think that night Jasmine felt more pain than this? She kept calling me. How could I not hear her? How could I not hear her cries?" There was no answer. "Mom, how can you realize it now?" Some questions remain unanswered forever. After being discharged from the hospital, my dad became despondent, and Justin's capabilities alone couldn't support the business. In despair, Jessica came home with Steven. She proposed that the 3 of them as a family manage the business together. My mother stared at her face. On that delicate face, there were a few faint bruises. It seemed like she had been hurt and was almost healed. "What happened?" My mother pulled Jessica into a room, asked her twice, and she started crying. After Jasmine's death, Steven had never been kind to me. Combined with Dad saying he would pass the business to Justin, we had a big argument, and he said he'd never been that affectionate towards me. What was the point? As the family business would still go to the son. He even hit me, claiming I intentionally didn't answer the phone, causing Jasmine's death. "Mom, how could he treat me like that?" Jessica had been pampered and sheltered growing up. They couldn't bear to make her do any heavy lifting. She looked fragile, on the verge of tears, hoping she could make her own decision stop. But my mother just looked at her expressionlessly. Was he wrong? What did he say? Jessica stood there in disbelief, looking at her. "Why do you hate Jasmine so much? Whenever she called you, it was always urgent, maybe even dangerous." When she brushed past Jessica, indifferently leaving outside, I struggled to cling to the wall, hoping to find some strength to support myself to. I realized that my mother could also be very sharp and perceptive like this. She could see through Jessica's schemes and ruthlessly expose her malicious intentions towards me. She shattered her facade of animosity towards me. But why did I never feel this when I was alive? Not even once. It had to take my death for her to reveal this. During dinner they started arguing again. It was all about the ownership of that factory. I never imagined it, but Justin and Jessica both thought it was rightfully theirs. Till they began quarreling, pointing out each other's faults. But surprisingly, the conversation kept circling back to me. Justin said, back then when you ruined Mom's silk scarf, didn't you blame it on Jasmine? How dare you accuse me now? Jessica said, why was Jasmine bullied in high school? Wasn't it because you untied her bra strap on the way to school and ran off, getting caught by those bullies in the same grade? When Jasmine went to college, you immediately persuaded Mom to convert her room into a piano room. What talent do you have learning the piano? Thinking others wouldn't know your intentions. You have the nerve to blame me. It was you who instigated Mom to make Jasmine apply to the local university so she could help with housework. You wouldn't even wash your own underwear, always leaving it to Jasmine. They bickered and quarreled. It was really unpleasant. My mom's complexion grew paler. Suddenly she stood up and exclaimed, enough. Jasmine is dead, can't you let her rest this messy, unpleasant family? It was like a gradually unfolding horror painting. My mom leaning on the table, her chest heaving rapidly. Jasmine died so tragically. Even the neighbors, even her landlady cried when they heard about it. Yet not a single tear shed for her from both of you. Now you want to drag her into these rotten matters. Enough. My dad suddenly cut her off. I understand your pain of losing a daughter, but aren't you going too far? I write in pain at the hospital all night, unable to sleep, and you didn't come to console me. Only talking about Jasmine. You didn't even buy breakfast for me in the morning. You just went back to clean her memorial photo. Let me tell you. She's ill-omened, dying on her sister's lucky day. It's such ill fortune. Our family's luck has been so bad since then. Maybe it's all her doing. He paused. Speaking coldly, I've consulted a master. He said, as long as we move Jasmine's ashes out of the grave, make a well, suppress her to the 18th level of hell, her fate won't afflict our family anymore. Then we will be prosperous. It's really how ominous even in death. My mom fell silent. She seemed like a withered flower, losing all remnants of vitality in an instant. After a while she finally lipped up, her gaze piercing through each person in front of her like a cutting blade. My unfeeling father, the two-faced Jessica, the selfish and impulsive Justin. This family looked harmonious on the outside, but had long decayed like a rotting piece of wood, riddled with holes. When I was alive, they only maintained a facade of harmony by relying on their disdain and hatred towards me as a bond. But now in my death, my tragic death serving as a catalyst, my mom's beloved husband and children finally exposed their horrific, true selves before her, looking at the different expressions of the three people in front of her. Number 4. Stephen, who seemed indifferent to the situation. She suddenly calmed down. Even her tone softened beyond belief. You are right. Jasmine is the only unlucky one in this family. We shouldn't fight over her. Sit down, let's eat. I watched, and to be honest, I didn't find it surprising at all. It had been like this for years. It was just this time, after washing the dishes, my mom locked herself in my room. She held my memorial photo, her fingertips trembling as she gently caressed it. I'm sorry, Jasmine. You have suffered too much all these years. We owe you. Mom owes you. Mom will make everyone come and apologize to you. She opened a drawer, took out a bottle of pills. These days she had been waking up from nightmares, and got some sleeping pills from the hospital. I watched as she crushed the entire bottle of pills and dissolved them in water. The next day she cooked a large table full of food, each dish laced with sleeping pills. After they ate, drowsiness overcame them, and they each went to their rooms to sleep. And my mom, she opened all the doors in the house, locked the front door from the inside, collected everyone's phones, smashed them and threw them, along with the house keys, out of the window. Then she closed all the windows tightly. She turned on the gas valve, turned the stove to the maximum, then doused it with water to extinguish the flame. After doing all this, she sat on the couch holding my memorial photo, waiting quietly for death to come. I floated to her opposite side, watching her, just like that day in the interrogation room, face to face with her. As I watched her breath grow more rapid, pupils dilating, lips tainted with a surreal cherry red. Did I said, Mom, why did you do this? Will atoning through death necessarily lead to forgiveness? It won't. I will always hate you. I will never forgive you. Her life slowly faded away. The tenuous blood ties between us also dissipated as I floated towards the door. At that moment by the doorway, the bond completely disappeared without a trace. Did I heard my mom's voice? Jasmine cautiously, ecstatically. Jasmine, is that you? Don't go yet, Jasmine. Mom wants to see you. I didn't turn back. Unseen in life, unseen in death. Mom. My soul fragmented, gradually dissolved into particles. Carried away by the wind, I seemed to see my grandmother. She wore that soft floral shirt. Coming to hold my hand, she said, I've already inspected for Jasmine for 20 years. In advance. Found a good family for her. In the next life, our Jasmine will surely be happy. By then grandmother will still be your grandmother. Plant a Chinese tune tree and a peach tree at the front gate. Doubt the night grew late. My consciousness hadn't completely dissipated, thus allowing me to witness the most beautiful scenery in this world. Countless shooting stars streaked across the night sky, scattering between mountains and seas. Turns out there were shooting stars tonight. It is said that making a wish upon a shooting star will make it come true. So in the next life I wish to have parents who love me, not needing to be wealthy, just a cake on my birthday, a red balloon at the amusement park. That will be enough.